subdivision under construction on the West Bank has some neighbors worried about their health and the health of those who could soon be moving in. The state says testing shows the neighborhood is safe, but in our new investigation, one environmental scientist tells Fox 8 she's concerned the state hasn't pushed for more testing to find out what could be in the soil.
The data shows there is asbestos there.
More than 100 families could soon be living in a new Jefferson Parish subdivision.
This was a dump site that was from John Mansfield, has an asbestos site, an old abandoned asbestos site in West Wego on 4th Street. The trucks used to use this as an off-site for asbestos shingles. People would see it all the time. It was just a dump that they would use, quite frankly, in the black neighborhood, would just throw the material on the side in the grass. Trees grew up, everything grew up around it.
But many neighbors, as well as environmental scientist Wilma Subro, worry about what could linger in the soil. Would you move here?
I don't think I would, based on the data that is available.
Subra has spent much of her life fighting for people who live near areas with air or ground contamination. How long have you been doing this for, Wilma?
Since 1965.
She and others are worried about what's taking shape near the intersection of Acre and Garden Road in Marrero. Houses are springing up quickly on the tract of land, but that wasn't always the plan for the site. In 2017, Jefferson Rise Charter School had interest in moving to the property and planned to pay $100,000 for the land. Following an environmental site assessment and concerns from neighbors, documents show Southern Earth Sciences conducted asbestos testing at the site. The company tested shingles and roofing material on the land and said asbestos was not detected. However, the report notes that not all areas of the land were accessible for testing. The deal for the school eventually fell through. The school wouldn't tell us why by email. We don't know if it had anything to do with potential asbestos. Jefferson Parish School Board member Derek Shepard says what happened to the land next could only be pulled off with political connections. In late 2018, a business called the Acres Group bought that same property for $30,000 less, a $70,000 deal. Online records show the owner of the Acres Group, Diane Bourne, has no experience in real estate development. According to LexisNexis, she's a 73-year-old woman who has an employment history in home health. Shepard says she bought the property because of who she is, the sister of longtime Jefferson Parish politician Byron Lee. Months later, the Acres Group submitted an application to make the property a subdivision. A company called the Maxima Group paid the nearly $5,000 application fee. The Maxima Group's owner, Byron Lee. And this brings us to another Jefferson Parish politician, Mark Spears. For 20 years, the Jefferson Parish District 3 council seat has been occupied by two men, Byron Lee and Mark Spears. Lee from 2004 to 12, Spears from 2013 to 19, and Lee from 2020 to today. Derek Shepard says Lee is Spears' political mentor, and that while on the council, Spears helped clear the way for Lee's family to make a big payday. In October of 2019, the Planning and Zoning Board approved plans to make the property a subdivision. Then in November, Mark Spears brought forward the motion for council approval. The council unanimously approved it. It just so happens that approval came at Spears' last meeting. He left the council to be justice of the peace. Byron Lee went back on the council. After winning approval to build a subdivision, the Acres Group put the property back on the market. What the group bought for $70,000, it sold for $550,000. On paper, a $480,000 profit. While the property changed hands, some neighbors still had concerns about the land. Any asbestos concerns at all? We've heard some.
Yes. The reason, and we've brought this up many times before, there were owners here years ago, I've been here 45 years, tried to purchase this land. We were told asbestos. What did it do? Just fly away? No, it did not. If it's in the soil, it's still in the soil. So all of a sudden, 45 years later, you can build a whole subdivision?
April 2021, River Oaks Development, the company that bought the property from the Acres Group, decided to have asbestos testing done. Environmental Consulting of Louisiana took 60 soil borings about 2 feet deep from around the property and 4 bulk samples near Garden Road. Those 4 bulk samples turned up asbestos, the report stating all 4 samples contain greater than 1% asbestos and are therefore considered asbestos-containing materials. 4 of the 60 soil borings also found much lower levels of asbestos, but those numbers were below the accepted industry regulatory standard of 1%. The other 56 samples had no traces of asbestos. Ranger Environmental then performed remediation, removing about a foot of topsoil and dumping it at River Birch landfill, which is standard protocol for addressing an issue like this. Ranger said in a letter to Fox 8 all material was removed from the site and disposed of at an industrial landfill. The area was retested to verify removal of the material. The developer followed the rules and regulations laid out by the state. Super is saying she believes those standards weren't strong enough to ensure future residents will be safe.
Should they have gone deeper in their remediation and/or evaluation, deeper than the 2 feet?
Yes, because when you start putting in a foundation, you usually go deeper than 2 feet.
River Oaks Development told Fox 8 in a statement environmental professionals made follow-up visits to the site to observe excavation and trenching activities during construction of the development. No asbestos was observed during construction of 23,160 linear feet of drainage, utilities, and streets. When inhaled, asbestos fibers can scar lung tissue, stop lungs from expanding normally, and make it difficult to breathe. Subra says even small amounts can be harmful.
So, according to the information, there will be 107 lots in the subdivision, and they took 60 samples down to 2 feet. So that's just a little over half of the lots. But when you look at the map, they didn't do each individual lot. They did a lot around the borders.
Subra bases her evaluation that more remediation needed to be done on the documents filed with the State Department of Environmental Quality, documents she reviewed for this story. She says anyone considering buying a house there should be made aware of potential danger in the soil.
We know it has had asbestos deposited on the property. And we know there's some that exceed the standard, and we know there's some that's below the standard. So do we want to come 20 years from now and say we should have required them to do more sampling and we should have required them to do more remediation?
The state is allowing River Oaks to build here. They follow the rules set by the state. What Subra is essentially saying is that the state should have pushed them to do more to make sure it is safe for people to live there. The statement from River Oaks went on to say extensive testing was done at the site, and Louisiana Department of Environmental Quality has visited the site and noted that no asbestos-containing waste material was observed. LDEQ confirmed to Fox 8 it visited the site, saying our inspector noted no asbestos that would be subject to LDEQ oversight. The developer provided us with documentation of removal and disposal of asbestos-containing waste material at an appropriate disposal site. As far as Shepard's allegations that political connections were behind the sale of the property, both Byron Lee and Mark Spears declined our request for an on-camera interviews. Lee said in a statement his only role in the project was loaning money to his sister for the application fee, and since he wasn't in elected office at the time, that decision should not be the subject of a news broadcast. He said the claims about a deal between himself and Spears are an attack by Shepard, who lost the council race to Lee in 2019. Spears also sent a statement calling Shepard unreliable and saying, quote, I approved this Rita subdivision plan with no opposition. Speaking during the public appearance portion of the agenda, my approval vote was the result of the planning board approval and also the planning department's recommendation for approval. We've posted the full responses from River Oaks, Ranger, LDEQ, Lee, and Spears on our website, fox8live.com.